Now, in its annual report, Amnesty International says the global system of law and human rights is under threat from a multiplicity of assaults which have accelerated since US President Donald Trump's return to power. This is the human rights group is accusing Israel of committing a live-streamed genocide against Palestinians in Gaza by forcibly displacing most of the population and deliberately creating a humanitarian catastrophe. Amnesty's International Secretary-General Agnès Callamard is saying that unprecedented forces are now seeking to destroy an international system of human rights forged in the wake of World War II and the Holocaust. Joining me now from Beirut is Heba Morayef, the organisation's director for the Middle East and North African region. Thank you so much for your time. Clearly, you're located very much physically in a region which has suffered enormously. But let me start by asking you about the report's conclusion in general, with human rights across the globe being under attack, especially from authoritarian leaders. How can we reverse this direction, especially when you take into account decisions that have been made by the current US administration?
Thank you very much for having me and for that question. It's a great place to start. I think the story of the Middle East in 2024 is crucial to our overall message, because the responses by Western governments to Gaza really illustrates the double standards in place when it comes to a lot of questions of international justice and the multilateral system in general. Our report today comes with a message that human rights are at a breaking point, that the multilateral system is in danger in and of itself. And for us, Gaza is a test case in many ways. The exceptionalism related to Israel is not new in our region. The support by the United States to Israel for years has shielded Israel from accountability for international crimes committed again and again in various rounds of the offensive in the context of the occupation. But last year was special. It was special because of the severity of the human catastrophe that we saw televised every day in Gaza, and because we at Amnesty found this to amount to the crime of genocide. So this is a test for the international system, but it is also a test to our humanity overall. We've seen initiatives such as South Africa bringing the case before the International Court of Justice. We've seen the International Criminal Court take the unprecedented step of issuing arrest warrants for Prime Minister Netanyahu and former Defense Minister Gallant, as well as Mohammed Deif from the Qassam Brigades for the crimes committed by Hamas and Palestinian armed groups on 7th of October. For us, it is crucial for there to be cooperation with the International Criminal Court, not attacks like President Trump's sanctions against the ICC prosecutor. It is crucial for European states to be consistent in their support of the international justice system, not the kind of exceptions and double standards we're hearing, particularly from Germany, but even from France when it comes to the immunity enjoyed by Prime Minister Netanyahu. Consistency and respect of international law is the only way we can preserve these systems, which are the only protection we have internationally.
I want to just take you a step further in that. I mean, what more can the international community do for the millions of Palestinians who are facing this daily military assault, not to mention, as I said, in Gaza, displacement and starvation?
Well, it was political pressure that brought about the first round of the ceasefire, that brought a temporary pause, at least in the airstrikes, right? And then, of course, since March, we've seen a resumption not only of the airstrikes leading to more civilian suffering, but also more crucially of the total siege, which is why we point to that as the best illustration of the fact that the genocide is ongoing. But these are ultimately political choices. It was, very significant U.S. pressure that brought about that first ceasefire, along with other Western governments, and that can be repeated. These are political choices that our leaders make again and again and again. And I think we place our hope in the worldwide demonstrations that we saw, where people have called upon their governments to uphold different foreign policy positions towards Gaza. And we have seen a shift over the last year and a half of positions. At the very beginning, right after 7th of October in 2023, we had a lot of Western governments giving unconditional public support to Israel, saying, do what you need to do, regardless of international law, pretty much. And that at least has shifted a little bit at the discourse level and has shifted in practice in terms of pressures to allow in humanitarian aid. For us, all of that remains insufficient. the pressures by governments who have friendly relations with Israel, who have cooperation agreements, who have economic ties, needs to be much greater, because otherwise these governments risk complicity in the genocide that is ongoing today in Gaza.
And this is all happening as the UN and its agencies are under strong attack from Trump and others.
Indeed. And I think the first 100 days of Trump, we've seen an even bigger sledgehammer being brought to the international system. And I think that's why we wanted to use the occasion of our annual report to really sound the alarm bells. We are already seeing a stronger backlash against Trump, both within the US and in other countries. But we are not underestimating the threat that he represents, both because of the statements he's made about the MENA region, not only about Gaza itself and wanting to forcibly displace Palestinians, which is of course a war crime, but also his broader statements and his vision for what a future in the occupied Palestinian territories would look like. We've seen very irresponsible decisions on his part with regards to USAID or other forms of US aid, with suspension decisions being made recklessly without thought to the impact that will have on the region itself. So overall, we are deeply worried, but we would reiterate the United States is not the only country in the multilateral system. We've seen a lot of initiatives by southern governments, particularly on Palestine, which we think are important. Again, I would point to the case brought by South Africa before the International Court of Justice, that at least has issued these provisional measures. So we have these decisions by international justice bodies that can help frame what the response of any responsible Western government that wishes to use this international system again, to be honest. It's marked, it's very clear what the differences in response were between the response to, for example, Russia when it came to Ukraine, and then you get many of those very same European governments taking very different positions when it comes to Gaza. Inconsistencies, double standards only weaken the system itself, and we have no other system. So what we are calling for is for the system to be reimagined and reformed, but not abandoned. And we are really sounding an alarm bell about the importance of this moment for the system overall.
Heba, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much again for your time.
Thank you very much.